When it comes to solving equations, I've noticed that students tend to have a very limited understanding of how to deal with fractions or how to use multiplication and division to simplify equations. This video is designed to remedy that to some extent. Here's a rather simple equation made difficult by including two fractions of 7. While we have the TI-84 graphing calculator, there's a simpler way to clear out that fraction. Whatever you do to one side of the equation, you do to the other. So I'm going to multiply both sides of the equation by 7. 7 times 3 is 21, and 7 times 1/7 is 7 over 7, which you should recognize as equivalent to 1. 7 times 2/7 is 14 over 7, which reduces to 2. And 7 times 1 is 7. Now the equation is much easier to solve because I've cleared out all the fractions. This technique is called scaling because we've scaled everything on both sides of the equation by a factor of 7. Here's another example of scaling. We'd like to clear out all the fractions of 5 and 3, so we find a common denominator between the two, 15, and multiply both sides of the equation by that number. Remember, when multiplying with fractions, it's numerator times numerator and denominator times denominator, and leading all whole numbers can be written as fractions of 1. 15 times 3 is 45, and 1 times 5 is 5. 45 divided by 5 is 9. A simpler and perhaps more effective approach to multiplying those two fractions is to reduce first, realizing that 15 divided by 5 is 3, and then multiplying. In either case, we get the same answer, but it's usually best to reduce your fractions first. 15 times 1/3 is the same as 15 divided by 3, so 15 times 1/3 is 5. 15 times 2 is 30, and 15 times 1/5 is the same as 15 divided by 5. And now we've got an equation that's easier to solve. Here's a helpful strategy. That's sort of the reverse of scaling, or rather scaling to make things smaller. While looking at this, I'm sure you're tempted to use the distributive property. Notice that 4, 8, and 12 all share common factors. It's perfectly acceptable to divide both sides of the equation by 4, as long as when you do so, you make sure to divide each individual term in the equation. These 4's cancel, 4 and 8 cancel to 2, 4 and 12 cancel to 3, leaving us with x plus 1 equals 2x plus 3. Since there's no longer a term out front multiplying the x plus 1, we can drop the parentheses completely, and then go about solving as normal. Another helpful strategy for dealing with fractions is multiplication by the reciprocal. By multiplying both sides of the volume formula for a sphere by 3/4, we clear the 4/3 from the left side entirely. To continue solving for r in this equation, the next step would be to divide by pi. While on the left side it's fairly obvious what cancels, the right side is much less clear. 3/4 v divided by pi is actually the same as 3/4 times v over 1 times 1 over pi, because the division by pi is the multiplication of the reciprocal of pi, which means to correctly simplify, all we've got to do is multiply numerator by numerator and denominator by denominator. 3 times v times 1 is 3v, and 4 times 1 times pi is 4 pi.